Hey guys, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing a review of a film that was sent to me by a director. He was kind enough to send me a copy and I told him that as soon as I saw it I would do a review. So tonight's the night. I just finished watching it and while it's still fresh in memory I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on it. So it's a drama, a very low budget independent drama from America, English language, released in the year 2013, directed by Jim Fields, and this movie is called Flyover Country. So the story to Flyover Country, we've got the main character. He's a young student. He is very much a ladies' man. He doesn't like homosexuality. And at the start of the movie, it takes place in an English literature class. And he is starting to give his thoughts on homosexuality, and he's starting to offend the other students in the class. But he doesn't seem to care about it, so he comes across as a very self-centered, nasty individual. So at the end of the class, he meets up with this guy who he didn't know before, and they start talking, and pretty soon a nice friendship develops. Now, this friendship is put to the test when the friend tells him that he is gay. And that causes the main character to put him aside and say, get away from me, you're a fag, all that kind of, horrible stereotypical stuff that, these heterosexuals say upon these, gay people. So he's not happy with that. He is really shocked and he doesn't want anything to do with him. So as days pass, this main character realizes the errors of his way. He comes back to his friend and he says, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that and I feel really bad and I'd still like to be friends. So the friendship is back on track, but then the outside influences from this main character are starting to have an effect. His family start to think that, because he's friends with a gay person, he's becoming gay, and his religion and all that kind of stuff is threatening to destroy what makes him as a person. So basically the main character has to be true to himself, has to try and find himself, and stay away from other people's influences. So if he can do it, I'm not telling you, that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on Flyover Country. This is a really interesting film. Now, it is a movie that does center upon homosexuality and the misunderstanding surrounding homosexuality and just basically the stigma and just the anger that is had by a lot of heterosexual people. And I think it's not so much heterosexual versus homosexuality, it's insecurity versus security. And in the movie, you've got the main character who comes across as very much a ladies' man, but then when he starts to become friends with this gay individual who's very secure in himself, you start to see cracks in this facade that the main character is having. And I thought he unravels to a point where you feel that he is not being himself, he's being what he sees other people want him to be. So he's not living life, he's not being true to himself, and you feel to yourself, he's not a genuinely happy person. But this friendship with this gay individual is forcing him to come to terms with who he is. And when he starts to basically shove him aside, he starts to feel bad for it. And you get an insight into this guy, that he's not so snobby, he's not such a nasty guy after all. It's society basically telling him how he has to be. Otherwise, he's going to be cast out as a leper and he's going to be, basically shoved aside. Then you've got his family who assume that because he's with a gay friend, he's gay himself. So it basically just centers around homosexuality and the misunderstanding that can come about with homosexuality. And ultimately, I think the film is more about being true to yourself, is more about not caring what other people think, it's just being who you are and happy for who you are. And I thought the movie, in some regards, it does a good job of that. But unfortunately, the problems with the film are problems that come from the low budget. So I'm not going to give this a star rating, with the simple fact that I think it's unfair to give it a star rating, because the majority of films that I review on my channel have a much bigger budget. So the problems, as I said, the acting was hit and miss. For a low budget film, I thought this was better than I was expecting. I've seen far worse out there from films of this nature. But I thought a lot of it was not very subtle. I thought a little bit more subtlety to the characters would have been a lot better. I thought they were trying to make it too obvious as to what the movie was about, and I didn't like that. I thought there were moments where it actually worked, as in a little bit of humour thrown in there. There was some comments made about religion, which, I'm religious myself, but once again, I'm secure in myself, so I didn't take offence to it, but I can see it offending a lot of people. I got a chuckle out of that. But I thought a little bit more subtlety would have made it a lot better, because it would have made it a little bit real. I just felt that there were some instances where they were just trying a little bit too hard, overacting, and therefore it just didn't feel right to me. But yeah, that didn't derail it, because I thought it was a very brave and honest sort of film at the core. and I thought it was brave filmmaking in a society that does not accept, the themes that this movie depicts, and which is a shame because ultimately what it comes down to is misunderstanding and insecurity in us as people. The soundtrack was good. Unfortunately, though, I thought it was a little bit too repetitive, but that would have been a real problem if the soundtrack wasn't good. Thankfully, the soundtrack is fairly decent, so it doesn't really get on my nerves. But that's ultimately the biggest criticism I have of the film, was that everything, the whole film needed a little bit more subtlety. It just needed to just calm down a little bit. It felt like it was getting too ahead of itself. But having said that, for a low-budget movie, I thought it had a good message, and I thought it had a kind sort of heart. It's not graphic in what it depicts. A lot of these sorts of movies try to be, too provocative in what you see. But thankfully, this movie held back on that for the simple fact it wasn't trying to shock the audience. It was trying to open the audience's eyes to these things that happen. And as a result of that, I can give the director credit. I think with a bigger budget, this director has a lot of good things to look forward to in the future. As I said, the main character had a very likable quality about him, so I thought he did a great job. And the friendship between the two main characters, the gay guy and the straight guy, I thought that worked really well, and I was interested to see what was going to happen. So, although the acting wasn't the best, it certainly wasn't the worst. So overall, what you get in this movie is a challenging film. If you're homophobic, obviously you're not going to like it. But for those of you who want to see something that is very real in today's society, I definitely think Flyover Country is something to seek out. But having said that, it is very low budget, so if you're not a fan of that, then I would still say check it out, because it is a kind sort of film, and it's a very relevant film to today's society. And although it does try a little bit too hard in forcing the message, overall, I think it's definitely worthwhile. So hopefully this director has bigger and better things in the future. And yeah, I enjoyed Flyover Country for what it was. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.